coming up here. Chapter or topic 14 is Australia and Oceania. And this one, again, it's just like you've seen it before. All the bells and whistles, all the video stuff is in here. Binghamton, all that stuff is here for you to work on. There's extra credit stuff. If you're looking for something to do for extra credit for the last 5 days, look at one of these videos or watch one. And Jimmy, this is a really good movie, 10 Canoes. If you're looking for a 15-point movie thing, 10 Canoes is an Aboriginal movie. What did I see? It must be 15 years ago now. I saw that movie. But yeah, 2006. Anyway, there's some cool things in here. Castaway was filmed in the South Pacific here. My wife did a presentation at our old museum about the art of South Pacific Islanders, how they make trees into tree bark and into clothing, and how they do tattoos and stuff like that. She's an anthropologist, so that works with her. But also in this chapter, we have, where we go, YouTube. We have a whole bunch of videos about ethnicity in Oceania, which is the term we call from Hawaii all the way down to New Zealand. And then there's a nice little short video about why Australia is all empty, because most of it is all dry desert, as we'll see here. Where is that? Right here. And you can see here, it looks like it's one big gigantic continent, but if you look at the population, it's along the outside like a donut. And pretty much from this bay all the way up to Brisbane up here and to the Gold Coast. And you can see the barrier reef right here, this huge barrier reef, which we'll talk about in the videos as well. And then this gigantic desert in the middle, or dry area. Alice Springs is the big city, and the famous Uluru, the national park, is somewhere over here. It's 4 hours from Alice Springs, so it's, once I zoom in, it's kind of hard to find unless you locate it somewhere. Anyway, and then on the western very tip, it's like San Diego or Tijuana or San Francisco, maybe a little warmer than San Francisco. This is the area of Perth. Why is it not even showing the city name? There it is, Perth, right there. This is one of the most isolated cities on the planet because you have thousands of miles of desert this way and then gigantic deep ocean all around you. But it's very much like San Diego or San Francisco or LA or Santa Barbara in terms of climate. The same thing down here in Melbourne. But Australia, we could see here, it's green on the eastern slope of the mountains. Again, that's orographic lifting. The EAC, famous by Crush, the little tiny turtle from Finding Nemo. There is actually an East Australian current that comes this way and then pushes down towards Brisbane and down to the Gold Coast here. Okay, but the most famous reef, the biggest reef on the planet, is this barrier reef. And Gladstone Central is a place you would go to, and Rockhampton is where you fly into and start doing some exploration. And then these smaller towns along the north coast. And as you go further and further north into Australia, you're turning more into areas like Miami. Hot, humid, wet. Darwin is up here, is one of the cities. Darwin up top here is much more of an Indonesian, sort of Southeast Asian city. It was settled, of course, by the English, who kicked out the Aborigines. But then since it's closer to the rest of Southeast Asia than it is to the capital and the core of Australia, this is much more of an immigrant city and a city that is very, very diverse. Of course, Sydney is the big city down here to the southeast. It's sort of like Charleston, South Carolina, I don't know, maybe Washington, D.C., all the way down to the Miami side, maybe not that warm, but that's what it's sort of like climate-wise. And you can see here the famous harbor, the Sydney Harbor, is this one right here. And of course, when you zoom in and look at this gorgeous harbor, I mean, it's just fabulous. Look at this. You come into one of the biggest cities, one of the coolest cities on the planet, and you'll see the two famous landmarks of the Sydney Opera House and then the Sydney Harbor Bridge. And of course, it's British spelling, so they put an extra U in there just to mess up Leah. Okay, so there's your big city in Australia, and the other big city is over here in Adelaide. I'm sorry, Melbourne. Port Melbourne, Adelaide's on the other side there. But Melbourne's the other big city. So when they were trying to figure out where to put the capital city, okay, it was sort of like what we did in the United States, where we fought between Philadelphia and New York, and then the North and the South. So there was a compromise. So they built their capital right in the middle, and they call it Canberra. And again, it's one of those isolated, sort of like Brasilia in the center, away from the two ports. And that's where they put the capital as a compromise. Excuse me. But you can definitely see here the dark green or the forested areas. I'm trying to make this spin a little bit. There we go. Okay. You have mountains along the coast here, which catches a lot of that rainfall, like we're seeing down the hill this month with the June gloom and May gray. So you get all the rainfall on the eastern side of these slopes, and that's why it's so green, and that's why there's so many cities along the eastern side. Once you cross those mountains, then it gets much drier. It becomes more like Mojave Desert type, and you can see the red soils, which shows you a lot of iron and exposure here. Very old soils here, and bedrock is really old here in Australia. And this is a huge continent. It goes all the way back, very red through here. If I type in Uluru, it's going to be somewhere over here. There it is. So you see it's 4 hours from the largest city, the airport of Alice Springs. But Uluru is this ginormous rock. Those who've taken the physical geography class know this one. It's called an Inselberg, like an iceberg, but a rock. Inselberg. And just like an iceberg, most of this is below the surface. This is just a little bit of a tip of this gigantic rock. Geologically, you can see how there all these sedimentary layers were laid down horizontally that pushed sideways. It's kind of a cool thing to see that one. This is, you might have heard of this name, instead of Uluru, it was called Ayers Rock. And that was a British colonizer's name, and finally in the last 15 years they've changed it to Uluru Ayers Rock, and then finally just Uluru. The other half of this broken piece of sedimentary rock is over here. It's another national park, but it's not as famous. Okay. All right, so again, when you look at Australia, it's about the size of the United States, lower 48 states. It's much smaller than even California. We have more people in California than they do on that whole continent itself, which is kind of crazy. And that's what one of the ideas of changing their policy of the white-only Australia immigration policy that they had all the way up until the 1960s, I think, all the way into the 70s, sorry. But the idea, they were a small, tiny little nation in the middle of nowhere, and the Japanese in the World War II, they were expanding to the south, and they realized that Britain had their own problems, wasn't going to help them. So since then, they've tried to open up immigration. So the Australia and the United States are the two biggest countries in terms of immigrant populations. Well, Brazil too, but Australia is very diverse. Yeah, it's still a lot white and a lot Northern European stock, but it's very diverse. There's a lot of South Asians, a lot of Chinese descendants, a lot of Southeast Asians, a lot of Vietnamese, Malaysians, Filipinos. It's a huge melting pot, just like the United States, but much smaller than us. So that is our future for Australia. And because they're changing, because they realized that they couldn't just be this tiny little nation with all these resources, they're now having much better ties, economic ties, and of course, cultural with all the immigrants, with Asia, especially China and East Asia, Southeast Asia, And then, of course, the Indian population that has moved to Australia. So one of the questions in your test, one of the big topics is Australia is sort of changing and slowly moving towards the Asian, considering themselves more Asian than Oceanic. And being a sports guy, they left the soccer community of Oceania because they were just dominating, and they joined Asia now. So even the cultural side of its sport, they're moving into the Asian realm. Okay. Any other questions about this? I know a lot of you wanted to learn about Australia when we started the class.
I learned Australia because I learned that Melbourne, Australia is still the city of Australia. So now, if you know Melbourne, Australia, so it's a city of Australia, part of, but the coastal capital of Southeastern Australia, state of Victoria, were known for the Melbourne Cricket Ground, includes the World Heritage Royal Exhibition Building. So I know Melbourne, Australia.
Professor? So I see that Australia has a lot of continental shelf around it. Is there any possibility that that could be fought over too? You see right there on the north side?
Yes, most definitely. This is the area that the anthropologists and biologists think that the Aboriginal people migrated from Asia across this land bridge.
Uh-huh.
And maybe they had like little boats through here, but they think this is one big land bridge, and then they moved down here. It also can lead to finding a lot of resources here because it is, as you said, a continental shelf.
So it would be like the top of Russia, where Russia's claiming all that, trying to claim all that continental shelf above them. Do you think Australia has enough, I would say, military to defend if somebody wanted to go claim that continental shelf?
That's a great point. Yes, they have enough military to defend themselves from other Southeast Asian countries versus the big behemoth of China, maybe not.
Okay, got it.
But China really can't even claim this area as theirs. I mean, this area is such a stretch to begin with.
Well, yeah, but you know, they're so belligerent in the fact that, you know, I saw that video where they were telling the U.S. Air Force, you know, get out of here, and that they sounded like they were fighting as a toddler. Like they weren't giving reasons. They were just saying, this is mine, get out of here, It's like they sounded like a toddler fighting for a toy.
Yes. Yeah. Of course, that's our perspective to it as well. Yeah. But that's exactly, I mean, again, they're playing the long game. They're saying we've been here forever, we're going to be here forever, and this is rightfully ours.
Well, and the fact that it literally got named the South China Sea, I think gives them more reason to say that it's theirs.
Yeah, but that's just, I mean, the Vietnamese don't call it the South China Sea.
No.
And the Filipinos don't call it the South China Sea.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Malaysia all the way down here, I mean, they're far from China.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, they're pretty much from like Mexico City to Dallas.
Yeah.
Right. So they're far away. But yes, China does have that, that idea that that's theirs. I think this is a little bit too far for them to challenge, but Japan did it. Japan tried to do it in 1940-ish.
Yeah.
They came all the way down here. One of the bloodiest battles with Guadalcanal down here. The Battle of the Coral Sea, which is this area here. We lost a bunch of aircraft carriers and a lot of soldiers and Navy people here. So yeah, this is a territory that has a lot of resources.
Okay.
Yeah. And Australia is one of the biggest countries in terms of mining coal, which sucks for them because people are moving away from coal, but it's a huge industry.
Yeah.
They have sheep and coal and a lot of other things, but those are really two big industries.
Okay.
Yeah, great point. And you can see here, this is Tasmania, the famous Tasmanian devil from Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
And this, again, it's an island. It's separate from the mainland, so it's got its own culture, its own language. It's still Australia, right? But it's still got its same culture. It's sort of like Miami being different than the rest of the United States.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's crazy
Um,
how you could see it's just the elevation. Tasmania is just the elevation tip of that continental shelf right there.
Absolutely, you can see that. So if we lose all the we freeze up all the ocean water into glaciers again, this will be one big continent. Yeah.
Yep.
Excellent. So that line that you're going to hear about in the text and in the slides and stuff like that is called the Wallace line. Let's see if it's here. I don't know if they show it in that one, but it's in some of these here. It's a line that splits the biology from Asia to Southeast, from Asia to Australia. It's in one of these slides here. I know that I put it in here, but you can see the movement of Chinese to the Southeast Asian area. It's one of these that splits. Oh well, there's a lot of history. Oh, that's not it. No, maybe not. I got a lot of slides from my friends' housing and stuff like that in Vietnam and things like that. So anyway, let's move on. All right, great questions. And Caroline, do you have any question at all before we move to Oceania, the rest of Oceania?
Not particularly about this, but for the extra credit movies, is it like we watch it and then like we write an essay on it?
Let's see. The assignments are. Oops, wrong one. The assignments are listed there with the extra credit movie. Let's see, and the discussion. I think is it discussions I have it in, or are they separate? I know for other classes I put discussions in there. Those are just articles. Okay, here are the movies, and I'll put them back in the fourth quarter here. So it's more of a critique about what you're seeing, looking at the customs, things that are different in the movie than it is from where you live in your life.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the biggest part about this, is showing me and telling me the differences between what you're seeing and then what's there and at your home. Okay. So I know it's called critique, but it's a review, but it's also looking at what you're seeing and how different it is from what we see here in the United States in your home. Yeah.
It's almost like a compare and contrast, because we're studying regional geography, so we're comparing how different the rest of the world is from us, from things we find normal to things that we do differently than them.
Right.
Okay.
Great question, Caroline.
Thank you.
Okay. Finally, we'll finish up with Oceania, and the biggest island in Oceania is not New Zealand. It is Papua New Guinea, the country, and then New Guinea is the island. This is the only place in Oceania that has mountains tall enough for snow. Okay, these are a big mountain range here. This country is extremely populated, but extremely diverse. Of all the languages on the planet, I think a third of them are found on this island themselves. Okay, this is a very isolated, a lot of hunter-gatherer society still. There's not a big, Port Moresby is like the biggest town. It's really not a big city, it's a big town. As you'll see, there's also Australia set up a couple what's it called, migrant camps or asylum camps here. I think this is one of them at Kabam. I think that's one of them. I forget which island it is, but they talk about it in one of the homeworks. Oh, there it is. Lorengau, it's up here. Yeah, Manus Island. I think that's the one. But this is part of starts the Polynesian or many islands areas of the world. You can see how much of the ocean is actually there. I mean, that's half the planet, right? Almost. But this extends from Hawaii, which is part of Polynesia, all the way down to Easter Island, which is all the way in the eastern side over here. Okay. We have the major island, and you can almost see this, right here. This is that continent that we think was submerged by the last ice age, melting. They call that Zealandia, from New Zealand, Zealandia, and that's been it's been researched and published in the last 5 years or 6 years. But on top of that, sticking out is the 3 islands of New Zealand. Okay, Christchurch, and there's a lot of faults that go through here. There's earthquakes all the time. Let me see if I can show faults. Right, tectonic plates are here, right through the South Island. There's tectonic plates. There's earthquakes. They had a pretty big earthquake a couple of years ago that closed some of these roads along the coast here from landslides. Look, there's another Half Moon Bay, just like we have in California. Christchurch is the big southern city, and then you go to the Big Island, North Island. There's Wellington, another large city there. I think that's the capital. And then there's another big city to the north here, Auckland. No, Auckland's the capital. Auckland's the capital, and that's the largest city here. Okay. What do y'all know about New Zealand? What's so famous about New Zealand?
The volcano that erupted, what's it called? White Island. There's a volcano close to there that made the news because they do tours to it, and they were under notice to not take people out, and they still did. And then when they did, it erupted.
Absolutely correct. There it is. Is that it? No.
No, I think it's called White.
It's called White Island. Yeah.
Yeah, it is called White Island.
It's
And,
somewhere over here.
Yeah, it literally started erupting when people were on it, and they had to run down. And
there it is.
People explained how they could smell the sulfur and everything, and it was hard to breathe and everything. And this tour company had already been given notification that it wasn't safe because of tectonic activity and volcanic activity, I believe, actually.
Yep.
And
Yep.
they still decided to take these tours without giving the customers the choice of saying, you know what, if you guys are under notice for volcanic activity, we want to cancel our trip. But they didn't want the cancellations because they're into making money, so they still took them, and all that happened.
Yep. What was that on Netflix or Amazon or Hulu or?
No, I've seen it. That's one of the ones that I've seen in YouTube that I was thinking of putting as extra credit.
Okay.
So I go to YouTube a lot for like videos of geography and whatnot, and like eruptions, and that's where I've seen a lot of these things. There's
right.
There's definitely a video on it on YouTube. Or you can
it was. I remember seeing this on one of those channels. It was a big video, but you can see them right here. Survivors. It was really scary from that video, from that movie. It was Netflix. There it is. It was Netflix. But it was crazy to think about. And again, this is an active volcano.
Yeah.
And they'd have tours here, and it just happened that the boats showed up here, and then they hiked right up to the rim of the volcano, right there. And this is a little bit exaggerated, but they went right up to the rim, and some people were leaving, some people were going there, some people were right at the volcano itself. And what did I just do? I don't know why I did that. There you go.
It's like when we have the fire restrictions, you have like level 1, level 2, level 3. They had the same thing, and their restrictions were pretty high, and they still decided to do the tours anyways.
Absolutely right. So that was a big disaster. What was it? 8 people? I think it was 8 people died, and maybe 15 or 20 severely burned. And you can see it. Yeah, and it was a small little eruption, but when you have people right there, it's extremely dangerous. Yeah, so that's a nice little documentary you could either watch on Netflix or or on YouTube, right? And again, here's a sort of a subduction zone, and right down there is a little volcano.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now I think I've got too many things open and it's starting to kill my screen here. Yeah. So this is New Zealand, and the famous thing is there's more sheep than people, right? We know that. That's kind of weird, but it's true. Yeah, my computer is sort of slowing down here. Maybe I should turn this off. I mean, Google Earth is just fantastic for this sort of material. You can see Hawaii is the very top or the very edge of the Polynesian realm. I say Polynesia, that's you can see all these tons of islands here. One is named Melanesia, there's Johnson Islands, there's New Caledonia, there's Polynesian Melanesia, Guam is part of the Melanesian Peninsula. It's really cool stuff. And let me go back to here. Go to this one here, showing us. There we go. This is the migration and movement, historical movement of peoples. And we think they started from Philippines over here and from New Guinea. And just like Moana, right, the movie Moana, they're all in those outrigger canoes. And it's really crazy to think about that New Zealand was the last one to be settled by population, by people. We're not talking English and explorers and stuff like that. We're talking Polynesian people settling these islands for the first time. As long as, 1500 years before BC, or as late as 1000 AD, which is, just 1,000 years ago, right? So there's Hawaii all the way to 400 AD, right? So they moved like a big giant, like you see in Moana, right? The movie Moana, that's how they actually did it in these big outrigger canoes. And it's amazing to think about how brave are these people to just go into the ocean with these giant ships and just paddle till you run out of food and water. Right.
Yeah, you don't know if they're going to hit land again.
Yeah, you don't know. I mean, if you're like 1 degree off, you just miss, right? If you're 1 degree off from the Samoans going to Hawaii, you miss Hawaii.
Yeah.
And you're done, right? It's amazing. On that art of the Polynesian textiles that my wife did, I also learned about how they sort of guide their boats based upon ocean currents and waves and all sorts of crazy cool stuff. It's fantastic. These people are smart as button, man. Unbelievable what you could do before GPS. And the sextant, they didn't have those European sextants and all that other stuff, but they did it. Unbelievable. I can't understand how they did it. It's amazing. But you can see there's groups here. There's the Caroline Islands, including Marianas, which is Guam, Hawaii, Hawaiian Islands, the Phoenix Islands, Samoas. So this is where we get our cookies from. The Girl Scouts go all the way to Samoa, take all the stuff from Samoa and bring it back. No, that's not true. Tonga Islands right here, Fiji, the big island group of Fiji, which they have a lot of Asian Indians population there, probably from the British exporting people, of course. The Cook Islands, Society Islands. You might have seen a lot of these on Survivor, the TV show Survivor. They drive all over they go to these places here. Tahiti, there's the famous Tahiti. And then all the way to the east, maybe it's even off the map here, is Easter Island, which is the one with those monolith statues they built, right? And we think, the anthropologists, historians think that people abandoned Easter Island after they built those statues because they ran out of food and water and resources, so they had to leave. So anyway, these are some of the historical pictures of how the Polynesian peoples did settle, on these boats like this. And of course, Hollywood goes, oh, let's make The Rock part of this, and it's really kind of cool. It's a good movie. Historically, it's okay. But it's kind of cool to show the rest of the world how this was settled. And of course, then the Europeans came and recorded it and destroyed everything. So anyway, Let me take off this because it's really slowing down my computer. And there's my son, long time ago. So there we go. That is our unit on 13 and 14. There's Southeast Asia.